Good evening all, and welcome. Tonight's video has been graciously sponsored by Skillshare. This amazing platform offers a variety of online classes on literally anything you can think of, taught by experts. And with many of us being home a lot more now, it may be time to brush up on existing skills or learn something entirely new. Like me. I've been trying to learn Tai Chi from the Aquarius Academy, which I highly recommend to anyone interested. There are also so many classes to do, so go nuts and learn everything you can. The first 1,000 people who click the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. So make the most of it, but for now, get comfortable and let the darkness take control. This story isn't mine, but my father's. My dad is an engineer, and when he was younger he planned and oversaw roads being built to distant villages in our city. So he was always traveling and was always with other engineer drivers of big machines. Our city has a lot of history, especially Byzantium and Ottoman, and treasure hunting is a really common thing, although illegal. In one of his travels, a group of his spoke with the chief of a village that was really remote, and they talked about a rumor on Byzantium treasure being buried near the old mill. Being a skeptic, my father didn't care about it, but one of the drivers, Ahmed, took it seriously, and he was interested in treasure hunting too, so he persuaded 2 other drivers to search for this treasure. So, when they gave a break from working, they took pickaxes and shovels from villagers to begin digging around the old mill. The mill is near water and in a small valley, and my father is on top of a nearby hill chilling and watching these guys. This next part is described by one of the other drivers to my father after the accident. They dug for an hour, and after that Ahmed hit something hard and dug further and reached a small stone arch. According to them, the stones looked like regular stones, but its shape and place were weird, so they thought that they must have found it. They dig further and opened a door under the arch that led to a clearing, but it was dark as hell, and they had small lanterns, but they got afraid, so Ahmed volunteered to enter. It was from this point my father was witnessing it. As soon as he put his head in the door, he screamed like he was in tremendous pain, got out of the hole and started running like crazy, swinging his pickaxe upwards and saying, "Get it off me," repeatedly. This lasted for 2 minutes. My father ran to help the guy, and the 2 others tried to get the pickaxe and calm him down. They removed the pickaxe from him, but he was still shouting, "Get it off me, please," and looking upwards, until he passed out. I kid you not. My father says that Ahmed stayed in a coma for 2 weeks, and was blind for 2 weeks after he woke up. Naturally, my father and others asked what happened, and he says that as soon as he put his head inside that place, he saw 2 black floating humanoid entities with really long limbs, and they dived to him and started to attack. He didn't see anything but these 2 things circling really fast and attacking him from above, and finally he says they overwhelmed him. He also said their attacks were like millions of bee stings, touching every part of his body at the same time, and it hurt really bad. Eventually, Ahmed recovered from his physical pain, but according to my father, after that day he always finished his jobs really quickly and left the place and never stuck around after work. Last summer, I was in our home in Turkey with just my dad. We live in the Netherlands. I was trying to sleep on a very stormy night with thunderbolts roaring up the clouds, as it sounded near catastrophical in my ears while trying to sleep. I want to explain the layout of my room first so everyone can get a better perspective of what it is I'm about to tell you. If you can visualize a room as a square from the upside down view, you could see it literally as a rectangle. So in the upper right corner is a door to my balcony, and in the down right corner is where my bed is, and I'm sleeping facing the wall and my feet are facing the balcony door. So now it's getting tricky. As I'm laying there facing the wall, I am in a state. I can't really call it reality nor a dream world. It was as if I were in between. I hear the stormy weather, and I'm in the exact same position as I was trying to sleep in. But the thing is, I can't remember the moment I fell asleep. It was like there was no transition of me entering a dream state. But that aside, I started hearing people talk. At first it felt normal for me, because it sounded like people were panicky, talking to each other, and I had this idea that this was because of the weather, like maybe something was happening during the storm. I was trying to focus on what they're saying. The amount of voices I was hearing was decreasing. It went from about a crowd of 10 to 20 to just 3. But the whole time I hadn't understood a word of everything that was said during this time. This is where it gets creepy. The leftover 3 voices I spoke about become clear, and I hear 3 female voices speak in Arabic. But the talking came from my balcony, and as soon as I noticed this, they stopped talking and started hearing one of them whistling a random melody and walk out of the balcony and heading towards me. With me facing the presence, with my back, and looking at the wall, I'm in shock, thinking if this is real or a dream, and at that point it stopped right behind my back whistling, and I get the feeling that it's inching closer and closer. There are goosebumps all over my body. I turn around screaming and see nothing, just my room, and there was no transition from waking up from a dream, since everyone can distinguish if you've had a dream or not. This left me truly horrified, and I started seeking answers, and everyone I went to with my story told me it was either a djinn or black magic. Anyway, I wish that there is someone to help me, and if you feel like you can, let me know. I grew up in a really old house located in a small town in Iran. This house had 4 rooftops, 4 basements, 2 massive yards, and 3 separate parts for living. My great-grandfather, his siblings, and all their children used to live in this house. But by the time I was born, it was only my family consisting of 5 members that lived there. So most part of the house was deserted and really scary. The house being home to many bats made it quite scary. But the worst part was that there were around 15 people buried in the basement. All family members from the time of my great-grandfather and before that. Most of them were children. Seems like in the old days when children would die of illness upon being born, their parents would just bury them at home. So the house was creepy enough. But the town was also scary. Nearly all of its population believed the town to be the home of djinns. Stories about seeing these djinns were everywhere. During the 10 years that I lived there were many times that me and my family saw shadows passing, things being misplaced, the sound of footsteps, and we eventually got used to it. But there's a particular memory that I remember quite vividly. When I was 9 years old, I was playing hide and seek with my siblings and cousins. I was the seeker. There was this room with a huge window with pink curtains. The window would open to a hallway, and I was standing in the hallway. The window was open, and I saw that a very vivid white hand was grabbing on the curtains. I was sure it was my sister's hand. I stood there a bit, watching the hand, laughing with myself about how my fool sister had revealed where she was hiding. I went into the room. There was no one by the window. I searched the whole room, because I was sure she was there, but found no one. Then I ran out of the room and started screaming my lungs out. My siblings and cousins came out of their hiding places, and no one had hidden anywhere near that room. To this day, I am still haunted by the image of that hand. This is a story about an incident that happened in my village of Rajasthan in Sikar, India. It was at my sister's wedding. Me and all my family live in Mumbai, but we often visit our village during our vacations every year. So it was my sister's wedding in my village, and my whole family went in order to celebrate it. The first thing you need to know about the house in the village is that it's one story. On the ground floor there are 4 rooms: kitchen, bathroom, toilet, and next to the toilet there's a staircase that leads to the first floor. On the first floor there are only 2 rooms and a veranda, or you can call it a big balcony, and a staircase leading to the terrace of the house. So all my joint family were living in the house to celebrate my sister's wedding. The night we reached home in the village, I was tired, and my family were assigned their rooms to sleep. Me, my uncle, and my cousins were sleeping on the first floor veranda on the first night. I was so tired I tried to sleep peacefully, and on the second night we all went to bed a little late. In the middle of the night, I woke up because I needed to pee. When I woke up, I saw my grandmother standing and leaning down from the wall of the veranda, and I felt a little bit weird, because my grandmother was sleeping in the ground floor. What was she doing on the first at 2 a.m? When she saw me, she started walking downstairs and I followed her. She took a left and went towards the toilet. I was also heading in that direction and saw the light on within it. I waited outside, thinking she had just closed the door before I reached it. But after waiting approximately 5 minutes, I decided to check the room my grandmother was supposed to be sleeping in. That's when I saw her sleeping peacefully. When I opened the door of the toilet, there was no one in there. At the time, I was feeling very sleepy and tried not to pay too much attention to it. I went inside the toilet and answered the call of nature and then returned to the veranda to sleep. In the morning, when I asked my grandmother what she was doing on the first floor at night, she replied that yesterday night she never went to the first floor. She then went on to say that there is a Djinn living on the terrace of the house. When I shared these stories with my father, he confirmed that there is indeed a Djinn. But he also said that after the renovations of the house there isn't a trace of it. My father then added that when they were very small, they always heard that someone was walking on the staircase drinking water from a pot, but the Djinn never harmed anyone. And my father also told me the story of my aunt. He said that when my aunt came into the house as a new bride, she saw these Djinn in the form of her new husband. At the time, my uncle was living in Dubai, so she was very scared and went to some mullah to ask for help. Mullah came and blessed the house and went that night when my aunt had a dream. In the dream, she saw a man with a beard and his face was half burned, and the man said that he will never let my aunt stay in the house. After the incident, my aunt slept in our house and always felt as if someone was shaking her toes, and she would always fall ill. Even some of her children fall ill if they stay in the house. And later my uncle built a separate house away from ours. Djinn are one of 2 types, evil or good. I came to know that Djinn, the one that was living in my house, was good and would never harm us nor my aunt, but just wanted her to stay away for some reason. I would like to preface this story by saying that I am not an expert in the paranormal. At best, I'm just a guy with an interest, shining some light on the unknown. Today at work, one of my co-workers told me a story of a paranormal experience she had. For the life of me, I don't know what to make of it. It sounded like something out of a book, but I know her. She wasn't making this up. And I'm sharing this with all of you to see if any of you can shed some light or have had anything similar happen to you. For context, I have developed a reputation at work for telling stories. Today I was telling a couple of co-workers a story about a college professor of mine who on the first day of class claimed to have had a paranormal experience. Naturally, my classmates and I were fascinated and asked him to elaborate. He said he would explain the whole thing on the last day of class. He did, but it ended up being a huge letdown. Just a perfectly horizontal strand of thread floating across the room while he was vacuuming. After I finished the story, one of my co-workers, an older Hispanic lady, said, "I had a paranormal experience once." I didn't expect much, but asked her what had happened. She went on to explain as a kid, her mum had dragged her to see fortune tellers. On one occasion, the fortune teller told her that someone would try to take her to the beach to drown her. She didn't think much of it at the time. Years later, she's working in a daycare in Florida. One day, the daycare hired a new employee, a lady who, like my co-worker, made extra money on the side cleaning houses. My co-worker didn't really describe her, but emphasized that she always felt there was something off about this person. Maybe that's hindsight bias, maybe not. I'm unsure. This lady frequently asked her to go to the beach with her, but my co-worker refused each time, presumably because of the fortune teller's warning. One day, the lady asked my co-worker to come over to her house to discuss their house cleaning work. I'm not sure what they were supposed to discuss about it, but my co-worker agreed. The lady gave her an address, and my co-worker drove there on that specified day. She explained, as soon as she entered this person's house, it became clear that the lady was evil. But the only thing she described in the house was a shrine in the bedroom. There was a ceramic genie from Aladdin on the table in the corner of the bedroom, which was surrounded by candles, incense, and other things. Naturally, this confused me. I made a joke that was something akin to, did witches get their stuff from Disney stores in the mall in those days? She didn't explain further. She just said it was the genie from Aladdin. Now let me be clear. I think my co-worker was being honest. She wasn't joking around. I could tell this story legitimately had her on edge. But that being said, I also think she probably mistook the ceramic thing to be genie. My gut instinct is telling me that it looks similar, and without a frame of reference to explain what it really was, her memory perhaps just latched onto the closest thing it could associate with, the genie. What it really was, though, I have no idea. The lady told her it was a spirit god. Then the lady sat down on the edge of her bed, motioned for my co-worker to join her, and held out her hand. Now at this point, still hung up on the whole genie thing, I joked that she probably said, "Let me take you on a magic carpet ride." My co-worker looked at me, not recognizing the joke as such, and said, totally serious, "That's exactly what she said." My co-worker took the woman's hand. The woman somehow led her without moving from the edge of the bed to a specific location in New York City. I'm not entirely sure if the woman just described the trip there and my co-worker's mind visualized it, or if she legitimately saw the place, but she made it sound like she at least felt like she was really there. The woman explained that they were where her ex-husband lived. They went to his apartment, knocked on the door, and no one answered, so the woman broke down the door and they entered. The woman explained that she wanted to burn it down with the guy still in it, so she lit a match and dropped it, which caused the room to catch fire. Oddly enough, my co-worker explained the fire seemed to remain contained to just the room, and I have no explanation for this, and it seemed to confuse her too. My coworker says that she still felt the heat from the fire, and at that point decided she didn't want anything else to do with this whole ordeal. She somehow ended it and found herself back in the room in Florida. Presumably, she let go of the woman's hand but didn't say and didn't hear me ask how she got back. She then ran back to her car as quickly as possible and drove away. She didn't say anything about whether or not the lady was still in the room when she came to, but I will try and find that out. But then things got even weirder. The lady never returned to work. When my co-worker asked for information on what happened to the woman, the employers didn't even know who the co-worker was talking about. They hadn't hired anyone new recently. My co-worker tried calling this woman but couldn't get through, and when she returned to the house, she found a vacant lot. I asked her to pinpoint the date this happened and asked if she remembered which building she had seen in New York, with intent to Google the date, the location, and the fire just for kicks, but she couldn't remember though. The story is unbelievable, I know. Yet, while I doubt some of the details of my co-worker's memory, I do not doubt that she had a genuine experience, and that the broad strokes of this event actually did happen. As I said before, I'm on here because I'm curious to see if anyone else has ever experienced anything similar. This isn't my area of expertise. This was the first time I'd heard something this outlandish from a source I trust. So, what are your thoughts? A while back, I was chosen to be in an indie film about djinns, basically the local version of demons. Before I continue, there are 4 things you should know about them. 1. It is said they can take the form of animals and humans with circular eyes, literally circles for eyes. 2. They're supposedly born from smokeless fire. 3. They feed on energy, such as the energy you use to stay awake and the energy you use to power electronics. And 4. There are Christian djinn, Muslim djinn, you name it. They have their own free will, so everyone is different. Some are very nice, while others not so much. Now for the tale. We were filming in the desert, and a series of events started happening. Right when we arrived, there was instantly a presence of something there. Then a knife, bent, twisted with red marks, started appearing at my feet. Every 15 meters or so, constantly, for the entire time I was in the desert, this knife would follow me. 4 or so nights into filming, right as we were packing up, a loud screech could be heard. It was sort of a mix between a falcon, a wolf, and a mountain lion. It was later revealed to us by an expert of desert animals that there were no animals in the desert that made that sort of noise. On the 5th night, things started to get interesting. At one point we were sitting down taking a break when the sand just started to smoke. We thought maybe a small plant had combusted from the heat, and after a minute or two the smoke stopped. We checked and there was no plant, so we all sat back down, and the second our butts hit the seat, boom, all the sand all around the smoking area and where the smoke had been burst into flames with no reason as to how or why. Then after that, all our cameras started to drain of battery power very, very quickly. This is frightening because 1, it meant we had to stay there longer, and 2, as mentioned in number 3, they feed on energy. The next night, albino scorpions, which are extremely rare, started sprinting towards the actors, literally going at full speed. We were forced to kill these rare creatures by burning them with a torch, and every time one died, 2 more would replace it. Literally 2 more would come out of nowhere full speed. This continued for several minutes, and things like this kept happening for the entire 2 weeks or so we were at the site. When we finished filming, we split up for a bit to let the director edit some of the stuff. Then we had to film parts at a house. It's important here to mention that the movie was called 3 AM. We were talking and one of the actors stated that since we had split up, he had woken up at 3 a.m. every morning, his dogs going crazy and his alarm clock going off, and his AC set itself to 3 degrees. 2 of the other actors were relieved, as the same thing had been happening to them. At the same time, I had never felt alone while I was in my room at night, and constantly felt like something was watching us. I guess it followed us home. Since then we have finished the film. I started praying for protection every night, based off events that have happened, and the actor who originally had the alarm go off at 3 a.m. moved to a new house. Another actor moved to Canada. We were actually filming in the United Arab Emirates, which is in the Middle East, so it's pretty far. The second actor moved internationally, and I am leaving in about 4 weeks. I'm just hoping it doesn't follow me home again. I really wish I had some answers. My sister lived in a city in Saudi Arabia. She was studying, and since we didn't live there, she lived in a condo/motel that was unofficially a dorm since all of its inhabitants were female students from other cities in Saudi Arabia, and perhaps even from other countries. She had a friend of hers join her, and they became roommates. It all began one night when they were asleep, and they liked the room to be pitch black, and out of the blue, the heavy suitcases that were on top of the cupboards fell to the floor, waking both of them up. Now for those who say it might just fall off randomly or be caused by the wind, it was pushed to the very back of the cupboard, touching the wall that it was resting in front of. And on top of that, the cupboard had an upward frame around the top of it to secure things from falling. My sister woke up immediately and told her friend they were not alone, and since many incidents happened in our home, my sister is the one that would feel the most uncomfortable when strange and paranormal events occurred. She felt that something wasn't right. She woke up, pushed the suitcase to the side, and played from her phone some Quran verses for protection, since we're Muslim. After that, she didn't hear anything through the night. A while after that incident, she and her friend were watching TV in the living room, and they heard a loud knock on the door, and when they went to check, there was no one there. Now it might not seem weird, but their room was located last at the end of a long corridor, where almost 15 rooms are lined along both sides. So for someone to knock and leave, they must be able to see the back of someone walking through the corridor as they left, so there's no way. Another incident that happened is since the very beginning, they heard thrashing, babies crying, pots and pans being struck, and a woman's voice talking in the room next to theirs. Thinking it was a student with kids, they never gave it too much attention, until the end of their stay. They asked the landlord if he could talk to the lady next door to keep it down a bit, and he said that no one had resided in that flat for many years. Also, the men at the reception told them they always saw ladies in abayas, which are long black cloths covering head to toe, usually worn in Saudi Arabia, walking around the corridors and going into flats which are locked or even empty. When they asked them, thinking that they were inhabitants, the ladies never replied or even turned around to acknowledge them. The receptionist told them that they used to keep praying mats, which are essential in Islam whenever you want to pray, besides the entrance whenever they came in the morning every day, and they'd see thick black strands of long hair the length of the praying mat. So they decided to remove them to prevent other students from asking them and being scared and leaving this place. This sister of mine had many experiences with the paranormal and always ignores them, and even sometimes she would dream of things that would happen a day or two later. My sister brought this story up to me a few times, and every single time she does, I get creeped out. This happened to my sister a few years ago in our apartment. She was in my parents' room praying. We are Muslim, so my sister was wearing a headscarf and a long skirt to pray with. My parents' room has a huge mirrored closet, so my sister was praying in front of it, which is a big nope from me. So as she is praying, she hears someone open the room door behind her. While they open it, she told me that everyone that was home was in the living room. So as she bends over while praying, she hears footsteps behind her approaching. Because she's bending down, she can't see from the skirt, so as she rises up to stand, she looks at the mirror and makes a dash to the living room, not even finishing her prayers. She said that in the mirror, she saw a tall black figure behind her, which attempted to wrap its long arms around her when she stood up. She said as she ran, she looked back and still saw it in the mirror. She ran and told my dad, and told him, and he said it was nothing. Still dumbfounded, she asked him later, and he said, yeah, that was a Djinn. For anyone who doesn't know what a Djinn is, it's what people like to call shadow people. Another time, about a year ago, my sister said how she was laying on her bed on her phone when everyone was asleep, and she had her foot hanging out from the bed. She said how something just wrapped its hand around her foot and she froze. She didn't know what to do and just stood still, terrified of what was holding her foot. She said it started to then stroke her foot when it finally let go. I guess her Djinn or ghost had a foot fetish. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you guys. I don't like talking about this much. It's probably one of the most trying moments of my life. But here it is. A number of years ago, I was on a road trip. I am originally from Saudi Arabia. The road trip was around neighboring countries, and me and my friend were having a blast. We're both Muslim, and have been raised and taught traditional Muslim values. One thing I don't mess with are jinns. They can be either good or bad, but it's best not to find out, at least in my opinion. It was on a very dark night, starry. I can't remember where we were going to, but it was about a 4-hour drive. We were really excited for this next part of our trip. As I was driving, my eyes were starting to get sleepy. I was getting tired. My friend had already passed out in the seat behind me, and I knew that if I carried on going, I would definitely fall asleep. So, I took a swig from my water and looked and squinted at the distance, hoping to find a hotel or something I could stay at with my friend for the night, to freshen up and leave in the morning, to finish this part of our journey. It was about a good 20 minutes before we approached any such place. It was getting dark, and right before we approached the guest house, I swear I saw something dart in front of me. My high beams were on, and whatever this thing was darker than night. It's almost like when it passed by my lights, it absorbed the light, turned it into pure darkness, and was gone. Me, being tired of course, instantly dismissed this as nothing more than a hallucination, which all it did was wake me up further and told me that I really had to get off the road. By the time I reached the guest house, my friend and I got our bare essentials and groggily dragged ourselves to the front desk, where we were assigned a room, and both went to sleep. I was passing out on the bed. My nightly ritual of freshening up before bed had slightly woken me up, which was frustrating as I really needed the sleep. Tossing and turning in my small bed, I look out the window, where I see lights dazzling through the thinly veiled curtains. Thinking to myself about all the places I'm going to see tomorrow, I try shutting my eyes to make the most of time. Then I remember. Did I set my alarm? I reach over to the little side table and grab my phone, flick it on and check the alarm app. It was set. I plug it in again and try to close my eyes. But then a thought entered my brain. The Djinn. Why was I thinking that? It wasn't a Djinn that crossed my path earlier, surely not. Simply a hallucination or a shadow, I was telling myself. But could it have been something more? I was unsure, but freaked out. I started to sweat and tried telling myself it couldn't have been. I ended up falling asleep and had the most horrific nightmares. I was in a dark, deserted room, filled with smoke, and being chased by creatures made of fire. I woke up screaming, my friend standing by my bedside asking if I was okay. In panicked and labored breaths, I asked if he saw something on our drive, but he shook his head. I told him not to worry about it and tried to fall back asleep, but the fear that I was feeling from the dream had persisted into reality. I looked around the room, but there was nothing, but this feeling of ominous danger kept up the entire night. I hardly slept a wink. I was blinking mostly, closing my eyes and opening them again religiously. I knew there was something out there. It didn't want me here, and it was making that abundantly clear. I really just wanted to leave. After the many painstaking hours and lack of sleep, 6:30 a.m. finally rolled around, and my friend, awoken by my alarm, got up. He asked how I slept, but he could tell by the look in my eyes that my answer was, I didn't. He decided he'd be the driver for this next part of the journey, and as we were just paying our fee at the little guest house, the guy asked if we had enjoyed our stay. I gave him a courteous nod, even though this wasn't necessarily true, but my friend, a lot more plucky than I, reached out to him and asked if he had experienced anything strange in the hotel before. He gave us a quizzical and worrying look before saying, "You didn't hear it from me. I've only worked here a while, but I've been told there are Djinn nearby, and some that can be unfriendly." That was enough for me. We got into the car, and I knew it was a Djinn that had been terrorizing me that night. I'm so glad we got out of there. All that I hope for is that it didn't follow me, because I don't think if I'll ever be able to sleep again if it does. I'm a guy in my mid-20s from an Asian country and a Muslim background. We believe in jinns and stuff like that, but I've never actually experienced anything paranormal in my entire life, and I kind of doubt their existence. But what happened with my dad is what really puzzled me. I've never seen him act the way he did when he met this ustaz, which is something like a priest, to get rid of jinns. They're not exactly spirits since they're not dead. They're an entirely different race in the Muslim belief. They're made from fire, and us humans are made from earth, and the angels are made of light. That was sent from someone to disrupt my father's work. He was working on something big, and he had fired a lot of people for being lazy. I guess some of these people were mad and sent him these jinns to make his life miserable. My dad was struggling really badly, but now we're in a stable condition. We have enough money for our needs and are doing a bit better now. So he had this gym problem for a long time. We didn't notice when it first attached to him, that these jinns can easily be missed because he doesn't pray and all that. Neither does my mum. Only my siblings and I pray, and we had to learn that by ourselves and got help from teachers and friends. So the thing that happened with my dad, this ustaz talked to this jinn inside my dad right in front of me at his friend's house. At first, this looked really silly because my dad was closing his eyes and then started talking in a weird way that I've never seen before in my entire life. It wasn't that weird, but it did totally go against his personality. The ustaz said to not disturb my dad anymore, and the ustaz started reciting verses from the Quran and pinching his shoulder, and my dad was sitting on a sofa while his eyes were closed the whole time, and he started laughing softly. When the ustaz said to leave him alone again, and my dad said repeatedly in an unusual way that he's feeling really hot, and all of that by reciting the ustaz, and the ustaz said to the jinn that if he wanted to be a Muslim and said no many times, then at this point I got really worried. I've never seen him like this and it was weird as hell. The ustaz asked how long it had been in my dad, and it said that it had been living in him for years. Like 9 different jinn are within him, and most of them left, but only a few came back, and this is the last time the jinn will go away. The whole time my dad talked weirdly and kept saying he's really hot in the ustaz's touch, and I saw his face turn red. The jinn didn't believe in any god, but in the end gave up and became a Muslim. I don't think it will last long though, because it probably said that to end the pain. And after the jinn left the body, my dad felt a lot better, and he couldn't remember much about the experience. My dad said he could feel someone talking behind his back, and also felt like he laughed a bit while the whole thing happened, but was having trouble remembering it all. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's stories. Jinn stories are quite rare and hard to come by, so, if you liked them, be sure to let me know so that I can try and find more in future. I hope everyone is well. Things are pretty much the same here, but I'm still working very hard on trying to find the 100 ghost stories. Currently on about 51. So I'm going to ask each and every one of you, if you've got a ghost story, please send it in. But try and keep it short, because as you can imagine, if every story were about, 10 minutes long, narrating a 100 ghost story video would take an awfully long time. So I'm hoping that the stories in the ghost video are probably going to be about 3 to 4 minutes on average. So if you could maybe send it like that, I'd be super grateful. Otherwise, I'll just put it in a different video, but it's entirely up to you guys. As always, a huge thanks to my lovely patrons and members for your continued support. It really does mean the world to me. So thanks, guys. But for now, I'm going to sign off. Stay awesome, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next one.